Politics and health are inextricably linked, and possibly most obviously when it comes to the environment in which we live. And we have huge debates in New Zealand about whether or not environmental influences make people sick, disabled, and ultimately kill them. And we've had some dramatic examples. Now, one was this young man. He's a very talented filmmaker, Cameron Duncan. He lived in West Auckland, and he died of a fairly rare cancer. And his mother and people in the local community felt that there had been a significant number of those types of cancer in that area, and they attributed it to the high tension wires around their neighbourhood. And if you go for a drive around Auckland, you'll see that the wealthy parts of the city do not have massive high tension power lines winding across the top of their homes. You only really see that in South Auckland and parts of West Auckland, which is a real telling political message about power in our society. And they're not necessarily the old versus the new parts of the city either. They're about, you have to ask some really, really challenging questions about why that is the case. Whether or not power lines or electromagnetic fields of any description make people sick is still debated. It's a bit like the bits of research that come out every now and then about mobile phones and whether or not they cause brain tumours. Now, how we respond to what alternative healthcare looks like is a real indication of how powerful politics or political views are in our health and disability system. So, this idea that if you want to receive healthcare that is not the standard medical healthcare, which is what we publicly fund largely in this country, if you want something other than that, you will be seen as different. Doing something alternative is quite risky in a political sense. And the way we respond to people in those situations is very telling. And these are 3 examples from New Zealand in fairly recent times. So the first one was Liam Williams-Holloway, who was this incredibly cute 3.5-year-old who was diagnosed with neuroblastoma, which he had this huge tumour on the side of his face, side of his head. The standard treatment for neuroblastoma in a 3.5-year-old involved, all the nasty things we know about cancer treatment, including radiotherapy. His parents investigated this and discovered that the chance of him being cured was actually quite low, and the risk factors and the side effects that went with the treatment were horrendous, and they didn't really want him to have that kind of treatment. So what they did was they had to seek permission. This is a really interesting dynamic in our health system. They sought permission from the DHB, the Otago DHB, to take him away from the conventional treatment, and they were told that they could take him away for, I think it was 3 weeks, and to try alternative stuff. And then the deal was that he would come back for, formal treatment. So what the family did was they scooped him up and they took him away, and they went into hiding. And nobody knew, well, a few people knew where they were, but the medical profession attached itself to children, young persons and their families, and to the police. And the whole nation was transfixed by where this family were with this child, where they were living in hiding. They stayed in hiding in New Zealand for 5 months. And when they came out of hiding, having tried all these alternative therapies, his cancer was in remission. And there was a national debate. You could divide the country down the middle, who thought, when they were in hiding, they were on the 6 o'clock news every night. Old photos of them. If you see this family unit, and the deal was that they would take the child off the parents because they weren't caring for him enough, and they would make him a ward of the state, and the state would sign the consent form for him to be given the treatment that his parents didn't want him to have. Now that's modern day Aotearoa New Zealand. Pretty freaky stuff. It was horrendous. And I remember saying to the people in my household, if we bump into this family, they're coming to live here. So if any of you got a problem with that, you need to get your head around it, because that's what's going to happen. Anyway, they weren't in Auckland, so that was cool. Didn't happen, didn't need to live at my place. So they popped up again 5 months later, and here he was in remission. He died a couple of years later after they'd gone to Mexico and had other treatments and had been followed around the world by news crews and things like that. And then there was this discussion after he died about whether or not the parents should be charged. Okay? They've never been charged, but there are people who believe they should. Now, 2 other cases in the same region, not that long ago, treated very differently. All of these 3 cases are about parents seeking alternative care for their children, care outside of the politically established mainstream of white middle-class allopathic medicine. Okay? So the second one, Tavai, now he was a 13-year-old boy with a bone tumour in his leg, and it was advanced. 13 years old, categorically chose not to have treatment. He died, and his parents were charged and convicted for failing to provide the necessaries of life, and arguably convicted for being involved in the death of their child, which is pretty shocking when you think about it. Then there's Caleb Moorhead. Now, Caleb was a baby, and his parents' religious convictions led them to believe that he should have been treated in a certain way. Now, there were a number of health professionals involved in Caleb's care who were very worried about his well-being. And when he died, his parents were also charged and convicted of failing to provide the necessaries of life. Now, I have to say, I don't agree with what Caleb's parents did. I think he was very unwell. I think he was in distress. I think they should have looked after a vulnerable baby better than that, despite their religious convictions. That's my personal point of view. Tavai is a really interesting case because the legal technicality is his age and whether or not he was able to give consent to not be treated. And so the argument was that his parents should have forced him to receive the care. Whereas, I don't know about you, but my experience of forcing 13-year-olds to do important things is pretty unsuccessful in the main. So how we work, how we behave around people who want to do things differently in our society is interesting to understand. Now, a couple of words about truth. All right? This picture, I think it was created by Coca-Cola. It turns up on a billboard every now and then down by Orams Marine. This is clearly not true, unless I've grown up on the North Shore missing something. I'm pretty sure it's not true. Might be what the third harbour crossing looks like, but it's not what the current one looks like. But the interesting thing is it's a photograph. Now, when photography was first discovered, it was considered completely irrefutable. If you had a photograph of something, photography was this incredible new science, and it provided evidence. It was truth, okay? Lots of work was done trying to take photos of spirits leaving bodies when people died. There's massive stuff on the internet about that. It's absolutely fascinating. We live in an age now where if you're looking at a photo, somebody's probably already tutued with it. And so it's not truth, okay? So stuff changes. Now I'm going to show you one more thing about truth. You don't have to talk about it, it's all right. Only take a second. Now, this is New Zealand. New Zealand political structures saying something that's not true. Watch the top right-hand corner. Southern Motorway in Auckland. I don't know why they have to do it backwards. Now, this appeared on the internet. The New Zealand Police put it up to say you shouldn't use a cell phone while you're driving. Can we just see it once more? Sorry, Dion. Watch the caption at the beginning. It's about driving and mobile phones. This truck driver was on his phone, it said. Doesn't say it now because they've taken it down. Now, this truck driver was not on his mobile phone. And the person at fault in this accident was the woman, I hate to say, who was merging into the traffic in the top right-hand corner and got it wrong. And she admitted she got it. Nobody died in that accident. Amazing, eh? Amazing. But that video clip was put online by the New Zealand Police to say to the public that you shouldn't be on your mobile phone while you're driving. It was not true. The truck driver wasn't. Okay? So, if you learn nothing from this lecture, I want you to question stuff. I want you to understand that our healthcare system is designed within a political system. We think that our healthcare system is unique and nobody does it better than us. And while we put an enormous amount of money into our publicly funded health system, and we have a political structure that keeps that going, including ACC and Pharmac and Whānau Order and all of the other services that you've heard about today. Other countries do this as well. The UK has had an NHS for a long time. In the US, Obamacare was the attempt by Barack Obama to put in place some safety nets around funding healthcare for the public. But there's a different way of doing it. You know that really complicated diagram I showed you where all that money starts at the top with the government comes in taxes and then it filters eventually down to the people at the bottom? There's a different way of doing it. And Singapore is a country that's done it differently. It's a really good example. What they do is they take tax off you for your health care, quite a lot of tax, there's quite a high rate of tax, and they put it in an account which is your health account. It doesn't go into a DHB or a PHO or any of those things. It goes into your health account. They will look after you if you are sick in an emergency, and the state will look after you in a really bad accident. But the rest of your health care is for you to spend. And what you do is, as you accrue that money through paying tax, you decide what to spend it on. So you might have a hip joint that's a bit dodgy that you want to have replaced, and you decide that this year you're going to have your hip joint replaced. You might have a hip joint that's a bit dodgy, but it doesn't cause you any pain, so you choose not to have it replaced. Okay? And then there comes a point in your life where the state takes over your health care again, and any money that's left over in your fund, you get to pay off your mortgage or pay your grandkids' school fees or whatever. It's a very, very different way of doing it, and it takes a very different political structure to do it, but it's radical. And while it's very expensive in terms of the amount of tax people pay, it changes the balance of power. So instead of orthopedic surgeons deciding that they have to fix fractures, because that's what they do, the little old 96-year-old lady would decide before she went into asystole and needed CPR and then died. She would decide what it was she needed. Extreme example, but same kind of principle. Different environment. Our system is designed around politicians and practitioners deciding what support and services you'll get. The key legislation around how we deliver, how practitioners work in Aotearoa New Zealand is the HPCA, the Health Practitioners Competency Assurance Act, and you just need to know about it. Then we have the Health and Disability Commissioners Act, which sets out rights for patients receiving health and disability services and was born out of the National Women's Inquiry into the Treatment of Women with Cervical Cancer. We also have a Human Rights Act, which is about ensuring people are not treated in discriminatory ways. We have this radical way of dealing with people being able to choose to deal with things when they go wrong, known as restorative justice. The idea that when things go wrong, when a crime is committed, it doesn't all have to be adversarial. You can get both parties in a room and try and find a way forward. It's a very unique Kiwi way of thinking about stuff, sometimes referred to as marae justice. Now, I want to finish by saying to you that being a university student puts you in a very particular political space. We believe in this country that universities exist to do certain things in society. New Zealand legislation outlines what universities should do. They should be places where new knowledge is developed and where sensitive issues are debated and where 15-year-olds can turn up and work in a laboratory and find out what a new cheap test for pancreatic cancer looks like. That stuff should happen in universities. And in any decent political uprising anywhere in the world, you'll find that the people in universities are seen as a threat. You'll find that academics are jailed very quickly in political uprisings, and students lead protests and sometimes get killed doing it. In New Zealand, you're pretty safe. We're all pretty safe, all right? But being in a university means you're in a place where you should ask difficult questions. We are, amongst other things, the critic and conscience of society. I don't expect you to believe everything you hear in this place. I don't expect you to like everything you hear in this place, but I do want you to think critically about it. And I'm going to give you an example. This is a cropped image of a painting that's on display in this university. Please don't ask me where, because I get into serious trouble every semester when people go looking for the painting. It is massive, and I'll leave you to imagine what the rest of it looks like. That it's cropped is a political issue as well, because I used to show students the whole image, and a colleague said to me they felt uncomfortable about it and exerted a bit of political power, and so now I show you a cropped image. I'm shocked every time I do it, because I think I should show you the whole thing. But this is my problem, not yours. This massive painting is part of the James Wallace Art Trust collection that we have here on campus, on all of our campuses, and we've got some stunning artwork in this university on loan from the Trust. This massive painting used to be in AC block in the stairwell. It took up the whole wall. And there were two complaints about it, that it was a risk to people's health and safety. And the first complaint was that it was so big it might leap off the wall and injure somebody. That really was a complaint. And the second complaint was that it was offensive, and therefore it interfered with people's ability to study. So because I was a bit worried about that, I rang the curator of the Trust and I asked him if we could move the painting. And he said to me, pull yourself together, you're a university, you're the critic and conscience of society. You should be able to show radical, challenging pieces of artwork in your university. Then he said to me, if you censor our artwork in any way, we will remove all of our works of art from the university. Heaven forbid, imagine being responsible for that. And I went, no, it's all right. We'll find somewhere else for you to put it. So we did. And now it's not in public, it's still on campus, but it's not on public site. So I said to this curator, how do you make the decisions about what's sensitive and what's not? He said contentious art should be in universities. And I said to him, so if we were a school or a hospital, would you put that painting on our wall? And he said, no, because we're a little bit more sensitive than that, and that would be inappropriate. But in universities, you should be able to do this stuff, which is a very good point. So if you go along that AC level 2 corridor, that painting's not there now, something else is there. But you go along that corridor, there's lots of pieces of art down there. Some of them are quite valuable. And there's a sketch of a naked woman as part of the collection. And when that went on the wall, people were really offended. Like, really. Faculty of Health, come on. Anyway, so here's Here's a sketch on the wall. People got post-it notes and cut out clothes to stick on it. Now that's censoring artwork, and it shouldn't happen. All right? I'll just leave you with that thought. All right, you've done very well being alive all day in lecture theatres. Go well. Thank you.